Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Cooldown Lap presented by Midwest Motorsports. I'm Anthony Castor, driver of the 8, joined here tonight by James Johnson, the voice of Midwest Motorsports, Justin Thaler, driver of the 2 in the Road and Oval Series, along with Eric Thaler, driver of the 15 in the Oval Series. Crazy weekend for some racing after the Olympic break. We'll go ahead and head into this week in motorsports, and I'll kind of introduce the topic here since it's a hot one, and we can kind of jump in on it together. So, Richmond race was exciting end to end. Not really. There was not much excitement until you really got to the end of it. And I'm sure each one of us here can kind of say it with Eric actually being there in person. I mean, the end kind of saved that race, but we'll kind of dive into that and kind of break it down here. So, James, what do you think of the race overall? And then we'll just kind of go around here.
Hey, good evening, Ant. Man, there were a lot of storylines coming into the race, right? With the tire, the option tire. So I was really looking forward to it and see how it played out. Richmond is one of my favorite tracks. You know, the D-shaped oval. It's the action track sometimes. So definitely had my hopes up coming in, and it didn't disappoint for me. You know, I'm a racing purist. I like the least number of stops and resets as possible. I think when you race somebody to the, you know, race you to the next telephone light, street light, you know, it's ready, set, go, and whoever gets there first wins. So for that part, I kind of like the way it played out. Some people don't like the long green flag runs and green flag pit stops. I think it's just a different aspect of racing, and you know, you never know what you're going to get. Well, I don't want every race to be like that, but when they do play out, I like them. There was I like the option tire. I like seeing Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez come through the field. I thought that was pretty exciting. Um, Seeing the strategies play out, it was a lot of fun. I really don't like what we saw at the end, but I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have a discussion on that here shortly. Justin, what do you think of the race there?
I mean, kind of really uneventful until everything happened there at the end. I think the tire, I guess, compounds were really cool and interesting. I think that was something cool to really see. You know, who's going to take that gamble? I think I would have wished maybe to see with the way that the stages were, maybe another at least one extra set of the, I'm going to call it the red soft compound. I think would have maybe added a little more there in the middle of the race, because, like, you know, it was either some guys were going to take them earlier, they're going to hold them, you know, in their pocket until they were, you know, they had something where they thought they could use them and really get a benefit out of them. You know what I mean? So I think maybe another set would have been kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how fast those reds were compared to the yellow tire for the first 30 laps.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, I feel like the people that benefited most from those was Suarez and McDowell, the ones who went on first, because they were still there at the end of the race. But
yeah, but you could also see, you know, when Suarez was what he start second on the primaries, and pretty much he had a hornet's nest of, I guess, soft compound around him. It was like he was just at a standstill.
Oh yeah, concrete boots in the river.
Yep.
He sank, but it didn't hurt him that bad since in the final stage he was still kind of there racing for the win. So kudos to those guys for going off strategy with it. Eric, you being there with your dad and Norm, how'd everything go there?
It was boring for the first 300 and I think it was 95 laps, 4 laps. But it was interesting to see the strategies unfold. I'll say that much with the with the different tire compound. Um, like Suarez stretching his legs in the second stage, and really getting a pretty decent lead. Until he switched back to hards, but um, it was interesting. The one thing that you probably noticed on the broadcast that we couldn't from the stands was who really was on reds and who was on uh the yellow tire, or the hard, or whatever they were calling it. But um you could get a glimpse of the sidewall from where we were sitting. We were sitting up top, um in the tower, and you could get a glimpse of the red if they were coming out of pit road, but that was about it. So there was nothing marking, on any screen there of who was on what set of tires. Obviously, when Suarez was out there in the second stage, you could realize that, yeah, he was on reds there. It was obvious when Denny and um
The
the
Bell.
20 car, yeah, Bell were on them too, because they were quite fast. But um there definitely was strategy with it, I thought. And I'm sure a lot thought that, being NASCAR, we'd just go in there and run those sets we had in the last stage and let it be, right? Um, to where Suarez was trying to uh, get up there and get some stage points for the playoffs and whatnot. So, kudos to that team to switch it up a little bit. But there definitely was some strategies that were trying to play out, and some that were going to play out fairly decent if cautions did come, in that final stage, which obviously they didn't. But sometimes that's the gamble you take.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if there was any, like, if you looked out there and you seen Suarez in that second stage, just like a rocket ship going through the field, if it was noticeable. But
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was noticeable because, let's face it, he's not that quick at a track like that sometimes.
for
Um,
sure.
he also, the one thing I did notice too, he comes through there like a wrecking ball as well. So that was fun to watch. But yeah, it was definitely noticeable that he was on reds at that point in time. Yeah, for sure.
I know you guys have the RE radios. You guys take and listen to everything out on the track when you're at the tracks. Were you hearing any kind of radio chatter on the people you're listening to about just like the people on reds noticing that speed difference or anything like that?
So I listened to Brad Keselowski. One thing I like is I like listening to TJ. But the one thing that, from his perspective, um, he really wasn't focused on who was on reds, who wasn't. Um, he had actually come out of the pits at one point. I think it was in the second stage when they pit under green flag. Um, he kept asking TJ what tires he was on. He didn't know what tires he was on. So yeah, I guess, without the driver physically knowing, and I mean, I would say Brad's one that's, fairly experienced, could essentially, hopefully, feel the difference between it, right? But he was questioning what tires he was on, and he never really asked who was on what, right? He
Mhm.
also was in the back of the field most of the race too, so that may have played a big difference in it as well, right? So, um, so to answer your question, no, from what I can
Yeah.
hear, uh, Dad and Norm were listening to Ryan Blaney, and um, nothing that they mentioned, of him worrying about tires or whatnot. So.
It seems to me like the most important thing would be to try to make sure you stay on the lead lap until the last pit stop, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
get trapped a lap down or be threatened to be a lap down during those green flag stops cycled. So as long as the caution didn't fall right during those green flag stops, you just don't want to be a lap down, which was why it was so important for, who was it that was coming back through the field and um, had to unlap himself just to make sure he was on the lead lap. I guess everybody at some point.
Yeah,
There
I
was
was gonna
quite a
say. I know
few.
Bell had that speeding penalty. He had to
Christopher
make sure.
Bell.
Mhm.
Yeah, got back on the lead lap.
Yeah, that was unfortunate because he did have a really fast car. Also, I was Truex, man. Truex was fast there, and I
Yeah.
think they could have dialed that car in, but I guess he blew up. It was a motor issue, I guess, from what I could tell. Obviously I didn't hear anything, but um, I do believe he would have been up there too at the end because they definitely could have dialed that in. But those Toyotas were fast last night, so they were um, they were to be reckoned with at that track last night.
Yeah, kind of concerning if you're Joe Gibbs' car. I mean, Ty Gibbs, what blows 2 or 3 engines in the last month, a little over a month, and then um, Hamlin, I think, had an engine issue
Yep.
or something blow, and now Martin Truex. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised during the break they weren't tearing those things down and going over them and figuring out what the heck the issue was. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little discerning. I mean, they were the only Toyotas I've seen blowing up. 2311 hasn't had issues, and Legacy either. So
Yeah, the it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting because, like you said, they seem to be the only one with the experiencing the issues, and you're not seeing Fords go out there every week and blow up, or Chevrolets even. So, what are they doing at JGR that's causing it, right? So
yeah,
interesting.
I mean that is actually that you bring that up. You really don't see many cars blow up anymore. So I kind of wonder if it's something that the team's going in there trying to bring out more power in them and stuff, and they're trying to find the gray area there on these engines to try and get more power out of them.
Yeah, for sure. So interesting. Maybe they'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
So I know we've been talking about basically the beginning, middle, everything in between. The end of the race, I believe, is what got the most attention. I know our Discord was probably the most active it's been for a NASCAR race in a while. With the Austin Dillon finish. Spoiler alert: if you haven't watched the race yet, and I don't know how you haven't, and you're in a racing league, go ahead and mute this for about the next 5 minutes. Not even, but which James, we'll start with you. What's your take on the Austin Dillon finish there?
Oh my gosh. You want to start with me, huh?
Yeah,
I don't think it takes much talent to run through somebody.
that's true.
It's unfortunate that the caution came out when it did. Of all the only caution of the race came with like green white checkered scenario. So I mean, it's after the race, I forget who it was that said it, but they said Richard Childers and Austin Dillon bring their own friends to the track. They don't need to make any at the track. Well, they definitely didn't make any.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to say in that.
Somebody else said something about Austin Dillon not having to worry about opening as many Christmas cards this year either. But yeah. Justin, what do you think of it?
Well, I mean, there's always been aggressive style moves since the inception of NASCAR, right?
Yeah.
People get spun, people get used up, leaned on, dumped entirely. But I mean, the dude came from a mile back. Like, that was a complete move of desperation, in my opinion. I mean, he completely sailed it in, and he was going to do that to anybody who was in front of him, right? I'm not advocating it or saying, that was good for the sport or a good thing to do, but with this new playoff format, and if you win a race, that you punched your ticket and you're good for the first round of the playoffs. Yeah, I think any winless driver, regardless if they were sniffing the point, the cut line, or completely back where, what was he, 32nd in points or something, 30th. I think anybody would have said, this is my best opportunity to at least advance and lock myself in moving forward, into this season's playoff, and I'm going to do what I have to do. And I don't think the move on Logano would have been as egregious had he not just completely set his sights on any car, right? Like, I mean, he gets Logano out of the way. That contact slowed up Austin Dillon, and then he drives down on Denny, which caused, he right hooks him. There's no question about that. But I don't know. That's kind of, NASCAR's always had that, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to quote Denny Hamlin. They've had that invisible line, as he said post race interview, that there's no penalty for it, right? Like, nothing ever happens. Like, you can dump as many people as you want, and I guess NASCAR's approach is let the drivers handle it on track, more or less. I guess it was exciting. I thought, like, it was I think anybody was on the edge of their seat during that restart, whether you're an Austin Dillon fan or anybody else. I think it was a holy hell, what just happened type of finish in the sport. But he's gonna get his. I mean, nobody's gonna let him forget that that happened. And I'm willing to bet if Joey has his opportunity, he's gonna take 10 opportunities against Austin Dillon.
Oh, for sure. I've been trying to look into it and see if there's any financial incentives or anything that the 3-team would get for making the playoffs. I know if you finish at a certain point in the standings throughout the season, you get like a little more money. I'm not sure if the playoffs are tied to that or not, but the way they have this set up now, you want to get into the playoffs for that chance. And they kind of, the way they have it set up, they kind of made this themselves. NASCAR kind of put themselves in a situation for checkers or wreckers. I mean,
yeah, but anybody else though would have done the same thing to him. I mean, Grandpa was right. Any other car would have taken that opportunity too. I mean, whether you like it or not, that's the reality of what the sport is. And in a way, you don't like to see it. You don't want to see that, but
I agree. I mean, you always see the bump and run and stuff. But how many other teams would take that opportunity twice in the same race, in the same lap?
yeah.
I mean, I get it. You're racing for the win. You're racing to get into those playoffs. You're racing for, if there is any other incentives in that for the team, for you to get like more money for the team or whatever, you're racing for that too. Sponsorship. I mean, they had the guy from Bass Pro Shops down there. I mean, there was a lot of variables last night for that to happen. I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, we can just fall back on blaming Ricky Stenhouse for the
It was his fault. I mean, he can't go a week without the quote Olympic off week. He's just dying probably to get into somebody.
Yeah. He had some time away. He has to make up for it. But Eric, your thoughts and opinions on the finish of the race there?
I mean, there's a few ways to unpack it. First is, if NASCAR had never implemented green white checkers, Austin would have won. Right? The The other is this is part of this is still again NASCAR's fault because of you win, you're in, and you put a guy in a position that's been leading, the last 10 laps of the race and is starting to stretch his legs even. And we go into a green white checkered. I mean, he's at a cutthroat position and knows that if he wins this race, he's in the playoffs. And did it by all means possible, in my opinion, right? Um, was it right as a driver? No, probably not, right? Like it definitely isn't the right way to go about it. But at the same time, look at look at the exposure that he's now uh given himself and RCR and even Bass Pro at this point. It could be good or bad. Obviously, if you're a Hamlin or uh, Logano fan, it's bad. But if you're against Hamlin or Logano, then it was great exposure. You wanted to see him win, right? Um, so there's, in my opinion, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And as if it was me on the track, would I have wanted to be dumped? No, absolutely not. You don't want to be dumped at all. Nobody does. But at some point, Hamlin and Logano have to look at it from that seat somehow, shape, form, or fashion, and understand that. And again, this is my opinion, that if either one of them were in that same position, 30 points, 32nd in points, and in third place, and all it takes is them crossing the finish line first, they probably would have done it too. Um, and again, that's just my opinion, but um, the other side of it too is, he's going to go into the playoffs, and don't get me wrong, like for some shape, form, fashion, he might get past the round of 16, but I'd highly doubt it, right? Um, so from Logano's and Hamlin's perspective from that seat, why not have him in the playoffs? That punches their ticket for another round, right? So, again, there's a lot of different ways you can unpack this one. Ultimately, hey, if it was back before the chase was ever implemented, he would have won this race from the caution. So, it was exciting. It really was. But at the same time, as fan of the sport, you hate to see that happen. So
I mean, his own teammate, if Kyle Busch was in that position, he would have done the same thing.
he would have. I think
Anybody.
I think that's how you look at it, because again, they've bred this "you win, you're in" thing, and when you put somebody in that position, and it's so close, right? I mean, what, we're 3-4 races out. Uh, I mean, he's in now. Like, he doesn't have to worry for those next 3-4 races. So it's hard to. It's been hard for me to go, yeah, Austin, that was a shit move, right? Like, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, you had some balls, because now you got two guys that are gonna be out. I know one guy at least that I know that's gonna be, after him. But we'll see what happens. He definitely didn't make any friends last night. That's for sure.
I mean, even Reddick gave him a good bump after the start finish. If
Yeah.
anybody caught that after
Yeah.
they both crossed the line. I mean, I'm going to say, like, this is all good, quote, drama, from the sport, but don't do that in our league.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
What do you think it was that they found? I mean, Austin Dillon's been nowhere all season. It was like 30 something in points. So how can you run up front all
I don't know.
with 1-2 week break? What do they find?
I honestly, I don't know.
It was fast all race.
Yeah.
And typically that's not his style either. That kind of racing. So it definitely was interesting. I don't know if he, had a little, a chip on his shoulder to get up there and get in. I don't know. It's very interesting. Um, the other piece you could look back on is Austin himself has said there's going to be some changes at RCR next year, and it's been rumored that possibly he removes himself from the seat. So maybe that was the piece. Like, hey, if I get into the playoffs, that's what's going to happen. But you don't know, right? Like, you don't know what's going on over there. So
Yeah, I did hear the broadcasters say that historically Austin Dillon runs Richmond relatively well, and maybe they just happened to find something in the setup to complement his consistency at Richmond to just kind of make a fast car. Again, I coming from my opinion here, you don't want to see every race end with people wrecking each other. Well, you don't want to see somebody wrecking multiple cars to get to the win. You don't want to see somebody becoming a derby car to win. But the way NASCAR has the playoffs set up, they kind of they force you into that corner to say, okay, you're out front. You had a shit restart. This is your only chance getting to the playoffs, essentially. The wheel's in your hand, bud. You either want to be in the playoffs or you don't. I mean, they're going to Daytona next, which is honestly anybody in the field could win that race, and they're finishing in Darlington. I know there's a race in between those two, but they're finishing in Michigan. That's Michigan's next, then Daytona, then Darlington. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, Austin Dillon hasn't been competitive all season, and there's no reason after this could have been a one-hit wonder. There's no reason to say he's going to be competitive these next 3 races. Why not take that shot?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And again, Joey and Denny, and the rest of the guys that are in can go, okay, I can actually breathe a little bit because now I know that's another guy that potentially, potentially that isn't going to make it past the round of 16. Like, the other one that comes to mind is Suarez. Like, he's not going to make it past the round of 16, in my opinion. There's a couple there that they can just go, work on those tracks in the round of 12 and not have to worry about it, So
Yep.
if you could think of it that way, that's, if you're a fan of anybody, a Hamlin or a Logano, that's the bright side of it. That's all I'll say. That's the bright side.
I mean, go ahead, Justin. You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, you have less competitive competition going deeper in, and I don't think they're too worried about that with him being in. So,
as a racing fan, I want to see the best racers race for the championship.
Yeah,
I hate to see somebody that didn't make the playoffs who maybe was a good driver, consistent driver. I mean, somebody is going to be out that maybe they are a better driver, have a better team, more consistent throughout the season. But again, this is the way the NASCAR has it set up. I'm just wondering about like the integrity of a racing division is a lot of times based on your reputation. If your reputation is entertainment over racing, I'll take my $5 million investment somewhere else. But at the same time, like you said, man, spotlight's on him. He's getting press thoughts and likes on his views and likes,
Yep.
and all the social eyes on him. The sponsor that maybe you wouldn't have got otherwise. So I just hate to see, a kid at the go-kart track, take somebody else out or risk getting somebody hurt because they saw Austin Dillon, their hero, do something on the big track. That's the way the big guys do it. But yeah, so I've got mixed feelings about it, but he's his own man. He stood by it. I definitely give him props for saying, I did it. There's no shame in it. And I had to do what I had to do, and that's what I'm gonna die on. So kudos for him for being himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing on this, and then we'll move on. And Eric, I believe you're going to dip after the segment, but
Oh yeah.
um, while I don't agree with everything, NASCAR really needs to look at their playoffs if this is something that they don't want to happen, and probably reduce the number of drivers down to 12. We have 13 different winners, I think, this season.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you get it to a point where winning in and then you go off of how many wins, then you're going to get your best drivers in.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, sure, you're going to, sure, the super speedways coming into this really throw a wrench in things, because the super speedways, you could have somebody that hasn't won a race at all in their career just get lucky, grab some draft, get up to the front, and be there whenever everybody starts collecting each other.
Ricky Stenhouse.
Yeah, Ricky Stenhouse. I mean, he got in last season, winning the Daytona 500, I believe.
So there's
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say that there's two things that come to mind here. One is lately NASCAR is in the entertainment business, right? They're trying to draw fans in, and I'm using quotations over here. Draw fans in. Does something like that, what happened last night, draw fans in? Yeah, I
Yeah.
could say that does. People watch that and be like, "Oh crap!" Like that's what happens there. The other side of it too is, okay, so NASCAR, let's be consistent here, right? Every time somebody right hooks somebody and sends them into the wall, we've suspended them. All right, so take um, Chase Elliott, right? Bubba Wallace has been suspended for it. I mean, are we going to suspend Austin? For hooking Hamlin there at the end? Like, does that justify it, or are we not, because he's the race winner and he brought entertainment in?
Is there like a track and speed, or
It shouldn't
indicator for
matter.
those? No, I agree. I'm just saying, is that their reasoning? Since this is a short track quotate and not a speedway or a super speedway, or
Yeah.
So I have heard that they do take that into account, the track type, how fast you're traveling when a right hook comes into it. Like if you're going 180 down the front stretch and you get right hooked, that's something you're definitely getting. I mean, Bubba Wallace for sure, something you're definitely getting suspended for. But I believe the short tracks, they do take a little bit more leniently since you aren't moving as fast.
that's the
But
only thing rationally that I can make any sense of for
Yeah.
that ruling is all.
But
Yeah.
it just, in my eyes, it made it okay, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it makes it okay for you know somebody of Martinsville coming up, or Bristol even coming up, to just, let's just hook somebody and I'm gonna come in here, win a stage, or win the race, right? Like, I know they're gonna be after me, but now I advance to the playoffs.
Yeah,
So
what happens in that first elimination thing, and if he's in first or second place and he has an opportunity again?
yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna actually ask because you triggered the light bulb, because I was gonna ask earlier and you just relit it. But you think maybe something interesting happens at Bristol this year?
I mean, you don't know. Maybe. That's I guess that's the next quote unquote short track on the schedule. Um, if something were to be repaid, I find it hard for Logano to repay something in the playoffs, but
Yeah.
if
I think it's going to depend on where maybe the standings are, and
Yep.
hey, it could. If he sneaks a win in, it could.
Yeah.
So
Well, the only thing about Bristol is you see people multiple times there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna wrap up the this week in motorsports segment with that. It was a great conversation between everybody. So glad we could all get our points out there and talk about it. Eric, we bid you adieu, sir. Get some sleep.
yeah, absolutely appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for listening if you're out there, and thanks you guys for putting this on. We'll see you
Yep.
this weekend.
We'll see you, buddy.
See you, Eric.
All right, guys. So following that introduction there of the weekend stuff, we're going to go ahead and move on to our league racing, which was eventful, but not that eventful. So, Road Series was off in Watkins Glen for a wet and slippery, I could say, afternoon.
Yeah. Afternoon.
So as we get these slides up here, I'm going to go ahead and move into them so you guys can look at the beautiful screenshot that was captured by Travis Rowe. If you guys have not had a chance to look at his screenshots yet, take a look. He captures them whenever he can. I know is it every week or every other week, but just whenever he can, I know for sure. And they're really good screenshots, guys. So if you see any that he posts, just give the guy a compliment because he's doing some great work there. But James, go ahead and take it away, buddy.
The GT4 season was just getting started. Race number 2, Watkins Glen. The first race was in the rain at Navarra, and the forecast going into Watkins Glen was about 50-50, right, Justin?
Yep.
For rain?
It was pretty much right at 50%.
And qualifying comes and it's pouring down rain. Full rain the whole race. There were 37 cars that qualified for the race. So first of all, shout out to all the GT4 drivers out there for showing up on race day. I know it's early in the season, but 37 cars, that's pretty awesome turnout. So thanks to each and every one of you guys. Bunch of new guys, I say bunch, quite a few new drivers, first timers, or new to the season. So again, thanks to everybody for turning up and turning out. Chase Fincher put it on the pole in his McLaren in the rain. Logan Bowl, a newcomer. Chase Fincher raced a couple of races last season, but he been up front from day one. Logan Bowl outside the front row. Michael Odell and Justin Glickner. Shout out to Jay Glick for having a great qualifying, which turned into a great run. Before we get into the latter part of the race, Justin, you were in the race. I think you could probably tell us more about it than I could, considering you were in the rig doing it. You qualified 9th. You want to tell us about your first lap and then what happened after the first lap?
Yeah, coming out through the S's, just trying to feel out the track and be safe. I kind of made a move on turn 1, which put me right on the inside of the S's, not where I really wanted to be, just because of the amount of water. There's a nice standing puddle on the right-hander S, and just got a little loose. Tried to make sure I get plenty of room to the other drivers as well, and got spun out. Pretty much went from like 8th, 9th, 10th there. I think to about dead last. I think maybe there's one other person behind me, but to try to continue to work my way up through the field, and I ended up pitting earlier than anybody else. And with the way the weather worked out, I knew there was no opportunity for a dry tire, right? Like week 1, it was kind of questionable whether you could go onto the dry tire or not. And last week there was no question it wasn't going to happen. So figured, well, I'll try and maybe short pit, get out into some free air, and see what I can do. And I kind of made my way back up through the field. I think pretty decently. I think overall I finished 11th, so just right outside the top 10. So
Okay, P11.
it was a recovery drive, but I for managing that, I feel like I was okay.
What really stuck out
It didn't
besides
hurt.
the rain? No, you did great, man. That's a great, like you said, recovery drive. I mean, first of all, you did good not to rejoin and cause chaos because it was lap one. You qualified ninth. You had the whole field behind you. 30 cars behind you. Um, so that was cool not to ruin anybody else's race. Although there was some reaction chaos that happened, but nothing that was your doing. But really, what was it? What were the conditions like, man? I know. Did you get a lot of rain practice in? I mean, what's it like for someone that maybe didn't get a lot of rain practice in, or when you're going through the week and you see a 50-50 forecast, what do you practice during the week?
Since we know a lot of these tracks already, and we have experience in the GT4 car, if it's looking like the odds are it will rain, I will just rather practice in wet conditions because every track is going to be different where the water sits and where the line might be, right? In the wet. So I would much rather get my practice in under wet conditions than dry and not be surprised. Um, Especially to know where to set your bias up, where to maybe take these different approaches that you normally wouldn't in dry conditions, right? So that's how I kind of approach it. And I think a big surprise for some drivers is just how much differently you have to drive in the wet condition, right? Trying to take care of those wet tires, make them last, not push it too hard because we've seen it each week now where it kind of let up a little bit, and then the track did some sections of last week did dry, so you could see where the line was. Um, then once it just turned right back, it was like a light switch. It turned right back to just soaking wet once the second wave of rain came through. So just trying to adjust to that, and you see that dry line a little bit start to form. You see your lap delta just get faster and faster, and you think, oh well, I can push it now. But then in the back of your head, you're like, well, if I don't take another set of rain tires, I don't want to abuse this set too much and completely be out of it if it gets any wetter than what it was. So it's a lot about tire management and things like that, and with maybe some drivers who aren't experienced in the rain. Just try and take your time. And the rain has shaken things up so much to where it's more yourself versus the track than you versus another competitor. Like, we've seen some of our guys who would normally be lights out towards the top three, maybe just either struggle or not feel comfortable at all under wet conditions. So you say a lot at first, you got to finish, and if you can finish and maximize off of somebody else's misfortunes and mistakes, then um, more power to you. That's the points well earned, whether you pass them on track or they're off the side of the road somewhere.
Do you think that iRacing is going to send new updates to the Tempest weather system? And if so, what would you recommend that they change, if anything?
I don't know too well. I mean, this is really I've done when it came out, there was just some official quote unofficial where you didn't lose or gain any safety or I rating from that I did in the rain, and I don't know how they're gonna play it out. I don't really know what they could maybe improve. Maybe like lighter rain periods, or just a lighter shower, I guess, even if it says 50% chance of rain, like maybe not make it so pronounced where it's pretty much a downpour, I guess. But I mean, I like it. I think it's interesting, and it definitely shakes things up. So I'm not sure what they might be able to even improve upon. I'm sure they'll do some tweaks maybe for either. The one thing they definitely need to do is add way brighter rain lights to these cars because if you're in traffic, I mean, the cars do have some rain lights, but they're damn near non-existent. They're so difficult to see when you're in traffic, and the spray is. I mean, the spray is realistic from what I've watched. I've watched a lot of like Daniel Morad and Tony Kanaan talk about it when they were testing it for iRacing, and they said the spray coming off the back end of cars, it's legit. Um, but the one thing I maybe wish is to brighten up those lights on the backs of cars because the spray it's intense. But if that's what it is, it's what it is. You know, I'm not trying to take that aspect of the quote simulation away from it at all.
You want to see where
But
you're going? Is what you're trying to say?
well, that and just know where the vehicles ahead are. It's really difficult to see where that vehicle is. I mean, it's just a cloud of mist. You know, in traffic, you can't really point where that car is just because the lights are so dim.
Well, it was really cool for me and Adam. Shout out to Adam Sondag. He was co-commentating with me and running the cameras at the same time. So thanks, Adam. But it was really cool when we were riding in camera or in car and watching the cars aquaplane and the car going straight and the wheel going, 30 degrees each way as they went through a puddle or something like that. It was yeah, it let us know how intense it had to be going from turn to turn around Watkins Glen. And I think everybody had an off. Everybody, I don't know how many 0x I can look, but
I don't think we had any.
yeah, nobody had 0x. So I think everybody had a chance to lead. Everybody had a chance to go in the grass and get sideways and spin around and try to figure out how to get back on track. It looked like it was a lot of fun. It looked like it was absolute chaos. I hope everybody had as much fun racing it as we did calling it. The race really came down to Michael Odell and Logan Bull. Logan Bull from Louisville, Kentucky, has only been sim racing for 3 months, according to his fun fact sheet. So I'd say he's doing all right to be driving the Porsche in the rain, doing that well. We did watch him go off more than once, a couple of times. It seemed like the downhill section going out of the carousel and into the boot across, I think what they call the laces, after the left-hander that takes you down into the boot, the downhill section, and braking for that next right-hander at the toe and coming up over the crest of the hill for that second, or to start the third timing sector, seemed to be where everybody was going off. Did you have trouble there too, Josh? Justin?
Yeah, it was just that braking zone coming up into the right-hander was very tricky. I noticed a lot of guys trying to, brake on the traditional line, and it didn't look like there was standing water there, but it would definitely just pull you, and you couldn't get any bite out of the front of the car, so you're just a passenger. I was trying to brake, like aim right at the inside curbing there to get the car to slow down and turn in, but I had an incident there as well, but it seemed like a lot of guys were just really trying to stay on the traditional traditional line there through that corner, and especially into the braking zone. And it was just it was chaotic there. It was really hard. There was really no puddle there. It's just I don't know if it was all the rubber there just made it way too slick. But there was some challenges into that braking area.
Yeah, well, that's where the action happened. Coming down with like 5 minutes to go. It was Brian Coxon, Logan Bull, and Michael Odell And Brian Coxon must have been having an off night or something. He almost just about all but pulled over and let Logan Bull go. Logan Bull and Michael Odell both got around him, and I'm not sure if Brian Coxon had some trouble or was just having an off night, didn't want to hold up the race. Like I say, everybody spun. So I think Brian Coxon was just running his pace and didn't want to be affected or make his race worse by trying to defend when it was out of place. So that left just down to Logan Bull and Michael Odell with 2 laps to go. Logan Bull comes into that down the laces in that right-hander uphill, and we were in car with him, and he slammed on the brakes, and the rear end just passed the front end. Stepped out before he even turned in. It was like maybe the brake bias was off, or he hit a puddle at the wrong time. A car just swapped ends on him real quick, and that's all it took for Michael Odell to come across the line, take the white, and take the checkers. 1 lap later, Logan Bull was about 10 seconds behind Michael Odell, the winner, in the BMW. Logan Bull again in the Porsche. John Daniels ended up third. Chase Fincher, your pole sitter, fourth. Brian Coxon fifth, and last season's winner, Jason Phillips, sixth. Justin Glickner once again finished seventh. Did you get to talk to Justin Glickner after the race, Justin? He seemed to have a pretty good show.
Yeah, he was pretty excited. He's had a really good start to this season so far. So I think he's adapted really well, I think, to the rain, and he's pretty damn good. And I know he actually did take off or take front tires during his stop. So I think that actually ended up hurting him because I know late in the race he did end up having a spin. I don't know if he ended up losing a position or not because of that spin, but he did end up taking just fronts only. So I think he wish he wouldn't have, but he's had a great start to the season. So I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, for sure. Glickner was 1 minute 10 seconds behind the race winner Michael Odell in seventh. Sixth place was 108 behind the winner, and fifth place was 107 behind the winner. We could have lost 2 spots from that. But that's why we race. That's why we run the race. Ronald Kabiltis, he helped me out with his pronunciation of his last name in the post-race interview. So shout out to newcomer Ronald Kabiltis for getting his AM division race win in the 13th place overall. I thought it was great. This week coming up, we're going to Circuit de Catalunya, which is one of my favorite tracks in Spain, and it's absolutely incredible. It's the first endurance race of the GT4 season. We're going to go 100 minutes, 2 pit stops. Yeah, you never know what you're going to see. So tune in. It's going to be awesome. That's tomorrow night. Practice opens at 7. Currently leading the points, Michael Odell, Brian Coxon second, John Daniels third, Logan Bull fourth, up 7 spots after that good showing. In the AM division, Ronald Kabiltis is leading with 2 starts, and Nicholas Aslin second, Kevin Bridges third, Justin Shoup fourth, Norm Snyder up 12 spots. And it says 6th, so there are ties for position. It's early in the season to be talking about points, but moving up to race 3, 2 pit stops. Is it going to rain at Spain? That's my question for you, JT.
I don't believe it is. I think we'll have some nice clear skies. Nothing to worry about. Maybe some overcast, but I don't believe we should see any rain. But you never know.
You never know.
It seems to change by the every time you look at it. So, but I'm looking at the forecast now, and clouds and precipitation. Yeah, it doesn't. It looks like it's pretty low here. So I think we'll be okay.
All right, that's great. Don't forget the Cup and the trucks are right back on schedule this week. So We are headed to Bristol for the Cup Series. And where are the trucks going? Do you know, Ant?
Trucks are going to Chicagoland.
Chicagoland, that's right. That
Yep.
town.
If you guys have been looking, the last screenshot on the screen was the truck points up to date, and I got Cup Series up right now. So these will be changing after next week's race. So we're down to our final 3 races in both the Oval Series. So it ought to be exciting. I know there's close races on both series. So Bristol's going to be a fun one. There's going to be a lot of tight racing, and I mean, I hate to say it, but there's probably going to be some cautions. Bristol's a short track that requires attention and well, honestly, a lot of respect because you're constantly around somebody there. So um, Bristol ought to put on a pretty good show. Chicagoland, I haven't driven the trucks out there, but it ought to be pretty similar to Kansas or Atlanta. So I expect some fun racing there. Probably a lot of 2-3 wide. So it ought to be exciting. I'm glad to see the ovals back for our final 3 races of the season, and then we can get geared up for our winter league.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Bristol again. I like running Bristol just because it's Bristol, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I think drivers need to be respectful, and we can. There's no reason we can't, have good green flag runs there. So, don't overdrive corners and bomb it in there. We don't need any Austin Dillons in our league. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we're
if you-
looking at
if you-
250 laps, JT.
Yeah, it's a long race, guys. If you make a mistake, it's a mistake. But when you continue to make a mistake, it's not a mistake anymore, right? So
That's a habit.
we
Is that how
believe
that
in you.
works?
I think it. I would hope
I
that's
like
how
it.
that
I
works.
like it.
I would hope, but I like Bristol. I think it'll be fun. I think our Cup drivers. I think we're good enough. We don't need a caution fest. So let's try and do our thing and have fun.
Yep.
Day or night?
Bristol night.
Okay.
You got to race Bristol at night.
I'm all about it.
Yep. And then we get geared up to go to Watkins Glen at night. So
Watkins Glen at night, huh?
nobody.
I'll
So
try. I'll try it.
yeah, I mean, in all honesty, JT, you should have that track memorized that you don't even need lights. But
Is it going to rain the Cup?
Yeah.
at this
Oh,
point, who
jeez.
knows? It's probably gonna rain some tears by then.
Oh, good one. JT's the points leader in Cup. How about that?
Yeah, he's coming down to the wire, man. That's what I'm saying. It's a tight race in the Cup Series. Honestly, I think anybody in the top 10 can probably strike at the lead if JT has a bad race. So
We'll see.
It's tight, but we'll go ahead and wrap this up, guys. We'll come back at you next Monday, with all the results from the road and oval series, and I'm sure we'll talk about anything that unfolds in the real life between now and then. So we'll talk at you guys later, and everybody have a great week.
Don't forget to stay in your lane.